Chapter 191. Chu Xiu's words caused the Ghost King sect's warrior to hesitate. He really couldn't understand Chu Xiu now. He didn't know what this person in front of him was trying to do. Previously, Chu Xiu was still carrying out his duty in the Guanzhong torture room to hunt them down. Now, Chu Xiu actually turned around and wanted to cooperate with them. What kind of trick was this? The Ghost King sect's warrior couldn't understand. However, he still asked cautiously, "Tell me first, what exactly are you going to trade with the Ghost King sect?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The person in charge of the Ghost King sect now isn't you. What's the point of me telling you? Take me to your senior brother. Only he is qualified to make decisions." "What did you say?" The Ghost King sect's warrior's eyes suddenly showed a trace of anger. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Don't be angry, this is just the truth. There is only one chance, the choice is yours. Take me to your senior brother, and we'll talk about cooperation. If you refuse, then I'll leave directly and cooperate with the Sword King City to kill the Ghost King sect. Moreover, you've seen my strength. With just the few of you, don't even think about keeping me here." After hearing Chu Xiu's words, the Ghost King sect's warrior thought for a long time, then gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I'll take you there." However, although he said he would take Chu Xiu there, he still let the other Ghost King sect's disciples patrol around to see if anyone had followed them, and to clean up their traces. The Ghost King sect's people were hiding in a very secluded place. Most of them wore human skin masks, and hid in a small city in the Jianzhou prefecture. They had skinned enough people, enough for them to change their identities several times a day. In addition, they had concealed their auras to the extreme. Even the Jianghu constables of the Guanzhong torture room couldn't catch them. However, the Ghost King sect's strongest person, Gui Ming, didn't enter the small city. Instead, he hid in a small valley. He was injured and couldn't move for a long time. This way, he would be easily discovered in the city. Therefore, they temporarily hid in this small valley to recuperate, leaving the Ghost King sect's warriors in the city to kill them and rob their internal organs, then secretly purchasing some elixirs to refine the 5-cheese unification pill to recuperate. When the warrior from the Ghost King sect arrived in front of the valley, 2 warriors from the Ghost King sect in the realm of 3 flowers at one's prominence emerged from the darkness. They pointed at Chu Xiu and asked warily, "Who is he? Gui Xian, are you crazy? You actually brought outsiders here?" Gui Xian hurriedly replied, "He's the Guanzhong torture room's Jianzhou prefecture's patrol envoy, Chu Xiu. He says that he's here to make a deal with senior brother. He came alone, and didn't follow anyone else." The other 2 3-flower realm martial artists looked at Chu Xiu and couldn't help but feel relieved when they saw that he was only in the physical invulnerability realm. A martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm wouldn't be able to cause much trouble here. They could do whatever they wanted to Chu Xiu. However, they had never seen Chu Xiu's strength. Once the binding seal of the formation formula was used, his speed would explode to the extreme, and he would be able to move unhindered within a perimeter. Even if he was facing a 5-cheese unification realm martial artist at his peak, Chu Xiu was confident that he could escape, let alone a martial artist in the 5-cheese unification realm, who was seriously injured. "Wait here first. I'll go inform senior brother." After a while, the warrior from the Ghost King sect came out, looked at Chu Xiu and said, "Go in, senior brother is waiting for you inside." Chu Xiu followed the warrior from the Ghost King sect into the valley. In fact, there weren't many people inside, only 5 warriors in the innate realm waiting on the side. As for the senior brother of the Ghost King sect, Gui Xian, the 5-cheese unification realm martial artist, also somewhat exceeded Chu Xiu's expectations. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that Gui Xian must be an old man. After all, Gui Xian didn't look young. However, Gui Xian was actually very young. He looked like he was in his 30s. He was handsome, but his pale face and scarlet eyes were slightly evil. At this time, Chu Xiu could feel that Gui Xian's strength was very unstable. It was jumping back and forth between the 5-cheese unification realm and the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm. Obviously, his injury hadn't been completely healed. "Are you Chu Xiu?" Gui Xian asked in a low and hoarse voice. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "That's right. This time, I'm here to discuss the matter of cooperation with everyone. Gue Xian frowned and said, Cooperation? You are the inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. You were searching for people from the Ghost King sect in the outside world. Now you are talking about cooperation with me. What do you mean? Chu Xiu said indifferently. In this world, there are no eternal enemies, nor are there eternal friends. Everything depends on benefits. Previously, people from the Ghost King sect killed people in my Jianzhou prefecture's territory and affected my business. Naturally, I had to search for you. However, the arrogance of the Sword King city has affected more of my business. That's why I came to you for cooperation. Gue Xian glanced at Chu Xiu and said, Since you said cooperation, how do you intend to cooperate? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, It's very simple. The Sword King city knows that you haven't recovered from your injury, so they are hunting you. However, I can secretly give you the spiritual medicines you need. You don't have to buy these things in secret. Once you've recovered, you can set up a trap to lure the Sword King city's people. Finally, you can ambush and kill them. Then you can easily leave Guanzhong. Right, you don't just want to kill the Sword King city's people. You also want to lure the Shang prefecture's inspector, Wei Hanshan, and kill him as well. Gue Xian frowned and said, Wei Hanshan is also an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room like you. Why do you want to kill him? Also, how can I believe that you're telling the truth? Chu Xiu said indifferently, Someone is blocking my path, so I naturally have to get rid of him. It's precisely because we're both inspectors of the Guanzhong torture room that I can't make a move against him. As for whether I'm telling the truth or not, you just have to send someone to inquire about it, and you'll know. Everyone in the Jianzhou prefecture knows that I don't get along with Wei Hanshan. It's not the first time we've clashed. Wei Hanshan won't let me off if he has the chance. There's also the Sword King city's people. I even fought with them during the day yesterday. You can easily find out about this if you go to Luocheng. Gue Xian looked deeply at Chu Xiu, then suddenly revealed a mocking smile and said, You so-called righteous sects are only as so. My Ghost King sect kills people to refine pills and refining ghosts. We know that we're not good people. We also know that we won't have a good ending in this life. However, we're not as hypocritical as you righteous sects. You obviously want to kill the other party, but you don't dare to do it openly. You only dare to plot in the dark. Chu Xiu's expression was a bit strange. To be honest, he has been in Jianghu for a long time. Some people said that he was ruthless and scheming, but this was the first time someone put him on the side of righteous sects. However, Chu Xiu didn't say much. He just said indifferently, What is righteous sects? What is devil sects? It's just a far-fetched label added by outsiders. How can there be so many saints before benefits? In this world, only Chu Kuanga has appeared in thousands of years. Moreover, I have never thought of myself as a so-called righteous sect. Everyone, have you thought about it? Do you agree to my conditions? Gue Xian waved his hand and said, I agree to your conditions. However, don't try to play any dirty tricks. Otherwise, you won't want to know the consequences. Chu Xiu shrugged and nodded indifferently. Don't worry. Those who have cooperated with me, Chu Xiu, will not suffer losses. If you don't believe me, you can look at the forces in Jianzhou. If they didn't cooperate with me, how could they earn so much? Gue Xian snorted and asked someone to give Chu Xiu the list of herbs they needed. Then he let him leave. At the same time, they gave Chu Xiu a strange white bone formation plate. In the future, they would have to use this thing to communicate. They didn't plan to stay in this valley anymore. The people of the Ghost King sect were cautious. Since Chu Xiu had been here, they had to be on guard against Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu was really trying to trick them and left with the people of Sword King City, they would be in danger. After leaving the valley of the Ghost King sect, Chu Xiu directly returned to the Inspector Hall of the Jianzhou Prefecture. At this time, the Ghost Hand King and the others were waiting for Chu Xiu. Seeing Chu Xiu return, the Ghost Hand King quickly asked, Sir, have you contacted the people of the Ghost King sect? Chu Xiu nodded and took out the list of herbs needed by the Ghost King sect. He said, Take a look. Are these the materials for refining the 5-Qi unification pill? The Ghost Hand King nodded after reading it and said, Yes, Not only are the materials for refining the 5 cheese gathering pill, but there are also some materials for refining the pills needed by warriors in the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm. There are also some special pills of the Ghost King sect. Chushio nodded. His eyes narrowed as he said, Ghost Hand King, what method did you use to drug your cheap master from the Ghost King sect? Can you use it in these pills? It's best to let them recover before the poison takes effect. Upon hearing this, the Ghost Hand King and the others were stunned. He asked in surprise, Sir, didn't you want to cooperate with the people of the Ghost King sect? Why do you want to poison them now? They knew that Chushio had decided to cooperate with the Ghost King sect to trick the people of Sword King City. The Ghost Hand King and the others thought this was normal. The people of Sword King City were so overbearing, and Wei Hanshan was always looking for trouble for Chushio. With Chushio's character, it would be strange if he could tolerate them. Moreover, if he did not get rid of them as soon as possible, the foundation that Chushio had painstakingly laid in Jianzhou Prefecture would be wasted. Du Guangzhong and the others were also shocked by Chushio's boldness, but they had all seen how ruthless Chushio could be. Now that they had boarded Chushio's pirate ship, there was no way for them to get off. They could only obediently follow Chushio to the end. However, from what Chushio said, it seemed that he was going to trick both sides. Chapter 192. Hearing that Chushio was going to trick the Ghost King sect, the Ghost Hand King and the others looked at Chushio with a strange gaze. Turning hostile was probably referring to their lord's situation. But Du Guangzhong didn't dare to say it, and the Ghost Hand King was also a smart person. Tangya, who was at the side, laughed, while Yan Bugui looked up at the sky, as if he didn't care about anything. Chushio knocked on the table and said, Some things the fewer people know the better. After cooperating with the Ghost King sect, what if they use this to threaten me in the future? It's safer to kill them all. Hearing this, Du Guangzhong and the other constables of the Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall shivered. They thought of Wu Saiping, who was killed by Chushio before. Fortunately, they chose to submit to Chushio at that time, otherwise, they would be the targets to be silenced. Of course, Chushio was going to trick the Ghost King sect, not only to silence them, but also for the things on them. He was very curious about what the Ghost King sect had that could make the people of Sword King City chase them for thousands of miles. Was it really related to the Kunlun devil cult? The Ghost Hand King thought about it carefully and said, It's easy to tamper with the herbs, but the difficult part is not to be discovered by the Ghost King sect. Back then, when I cheated my cheap master, I used the trick of stealing a beam and replacing it with a pillar. In the beginning, I only gave him normal elixirs, but the last few elixirs I gave him were mixed with some elixirs that countered his attributes. The way of alchemy is very complicated. If one is not careful, the pills can be refined into poison. Especially the people of the Ghost King sect. Although their cultivation method is of the devil path, it includes many Taoist branches. They are the most rigorous in the aspect of the 5 elements complementing and restraining each other. As long as it's done, I'm confident that I can make a move in the aspect of the 5 elements complementing and restraining each other. I can also tamper with the elixirs I gave them, allowing them to recover from their injuries while hiding a hidden danger in their bodies. When the time comes, I only need to use the medicine to detonate it. Ghost Hand King was good at many things, such as array Dao, hidden weapons, disguise, and so on. Now it seemed that Ghost Hand King was also good at alchemy. However, most people could not understand what he said, including Chushio. Other than killing people to cultivate, Chushio was too lazy to study these messy things. But as a superior he didn't need to know so much, so Chushio asked directly, How confident are you? Ghost Hand King said confidently, The other side only has an injured 5 cheese origin realm martial artist. I have absolute confidence that the other side won't be able to see any flaws. However, to use the restraint of the 5 elements to hide the elixirs in the other side's body, I also need some special elixirs. It's easy to find one, but it's a bit difficult to gather all of them. Chushio waved his hand casually and said, It might be difficult elsewhere, but don't forget that this is the Guangzhong area. There are so many merchants from the 3 countries. What can't we find? Write a list of what you want and give it to me. I'll go find the Luo family patriarch and have them gather it. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Ghost Hand King finally reacted. This was the Guanzhong area, the most prosperous trade area in the world. Although it was a mix of good and bad people, most of the things in the three countries could be found in the Guanzhong area. Ghost Hand King told Chu Xiu everything he wanted, and Chu Xiu immediately had the Luo family patriarch mobilize the power of the entire Jianzhou prefecture to help Ghost Hand King find these things. Of course, it was all done in secret. After getting these things, Ghost Hand King began to do some tricks on the elixirs sent to the Ghost King sect. It was very covert. He just used other herbs to add some ingredients to the original elixirs that had certain attributes. If the original attributes of the elixirs were pure elixirs with the 5 elements, after Ghost Hand King added those things, these elixirs had another attribute, something that completely restrained the original attributes of the elixirs. Looking at the elixirs that basically didn't have any changes, Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes, I'll send them to the Ghost King sect now." As for whether his tricks would be discovered by the Ghost King sect, Chu Xiu wasn't worried at all. If he wasn't discovered, then he would act according to his plan. If he was discovered, then Chu Xiu would just push the boat with the current and directly expose the location of the Ghost King sect. Then he would lead the people of Sword King City and the Guanzhong torture room to completely kill them. As for whether the Ghost King sect would reveal that Chu Xiu was colluding with them, Chu Xiu wasn't worried at all. He was the inspector of the Guanzhong torture room, and the other party was a devil cultivator who didn't shrink from any evil. In the end, who should they believe? Was there a need to ask? After contacting the Ghost King sect, Chu Xiu secretly sent the things over. Although the people of the Ghost King sect checked carefully, they didn't find anything wrong. Although Ghost Hand King wasn't an official disciple of the Ghost King sect, he had been in contact with the disciples of the Ghost King sect for a long time. He was even a nominal disciple of the Ghost King sect. Although his understanding of the Ghost King sect wasn't deep, it was absolutely not little. His secret tricks were equivalent to a traitor in the Ghost King sect. It was really difficult for Gui Ming and the others to find out. 10 days later, the Ghost King sect had refined enough elixirs with enough elixirs. They quickly recovered from their injuries and contacted Chu Xiu to prepare for the attack on Sword King City. In the Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall, Chu Xiu read the news from the Ghost King sect with a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Wei Hanshan and the group of people from Sword King City had been tormenting him during this period. Everything should be over now, right? Chu Xiu immediately asked Ghost Hand King, Du Guangzhong, and the others to gather their subordinates. However, they didn't gather all of them, only their trusted subordinates. At this time, Sword King City's people were getting impatient after more than 10 days of searching. They had spent so much effort, yet they couldn't find even the slightest clue. This even made Gu Jianglu suspect that the other party had already left Guanzhong. Moreover, Jianzhou Prefecture's Chu Xiu's refusal to cooperate also made Gu Jianglu very angry. How dare a small warrior of the physical invulnerability realm be so arrogant and threaten him? He really didn't know his place and didn't know his place. However, this was Guanzhong after all, and the other party was the inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. Gu Jianglu couldn't really do anything to the other party. Otherwise, he would be slapping the face of the Guanzhong torture room. However, if he found out that Chu Xiu had left Guanzhong and met him, he would definitely make Chu Xiu beg him. Just as Gu Jianglu was thinking about what to do next, Wei Hanshan suddenly looked for Gu Jianglu with a face full of excitement and said, "Mr. Gu, I found traces of the Ghost King sect." Gu Jianglu suddenly stood up and said, "What? Are you telling the truth?" Wei Hanshan hurriedly nodded and said, "It's true. The remnants of the Ghost Hand King are very cunning. It turns out that they actually split up into smaller groups. After disguising themselves, there is only one person in each city. Previously, we were investigating as a group, so naturally, we overlooked their tracks. This time, it was also fortunate that my subordinates accidentally overheard the conversation between the 2 remaining Ghost King sect members, and was able to find the other party. Because the leader of the Ghost King sect was injured, he hid in a small villa between the Shang Prefecture and the Jian Prefecture. He was waiting for the others to prepare the herbs for him, so he could refine them into pills to heal his injuries. This time those Ghost King sect people all left the city. It was because they had already gathered all the elixirs during this period of time, and were preparing to go back to refine pills. If they were to delay for a period of time, by the time those Ghost King sect people had completely recovered from their injuries, most likely they would have to leave the pass. Gu Jianglu laughed and said, Good. This is the right time. This time, we can catch the remnants of the Ghost King sect in one fell swoop. Just as Gu Jianglu was about to set off, Wei Hanshan suddenly said, Mr. Gu, I came in a hurry this time and didn't bring my subordinates. This is the Jian Prefecture. Why don't we ask Chu Xiu to send reinforcements? Of course, Wei Hanshan didn't say this to give credit to Chu Xiu. In fact, this matter had already become the leader of Sword King City. They only had obligations, so how could they get credit? He deliberately did not bring anyone with him. He only wanted Chu Xiu to make a move. When the time came, Chu Xiu's subordinates would definitely suffer heavy losses when facing those demonic cultivators who had been forced to their limits and were about to jump over the wall. Gu Jianglu glanced at Wei Hanshan. Although he was a bit arrogant, he was, after all, a member of a great sect. He had seen the intrigue between the major forces many times, so this kind of thing was not rare. He could see what Wei Hanshan was thinking at a glance. However, Gu Jianglu didn't point it out because he was also somewhat dissatisfied with Chu Xiu's rudeness and threats. Gu Jianglu turned to Yang Ling and said, Go tell Chu Xiu to send someone here. By the way, Lin Kaiyun and the others are still in another small city. Send someone to inform them, and ask them to come here. We will leave after killing the Ghost King sect. Because they had searched separately before, Lin Kaiyun also brought 2 people to another small city. However, Gu Jianglu didn't plan to wait for them. The Ghost King sect had too many strange methods. They were simply slippery. It was not easy to find such an opportunity, so he didn't have time to delay. At this time, Yang Ling opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He naturally saw through Wei Hanshan's plan, but he didn't plan to interfere. After all, he didn't have any friendship with Chu Xiu. In fact, he was even a bit jealous of Chu Xiu. He had been at Wei Jiuduan's beck and call for so many years, but Wei Jiuduan had never given him the position of patrol envoy. In the end, Chu Xiu had become patrol envoy the moment he arrived, and was even favored by Wei Jiuduan. Why? Chapter 193. In the Jianzhou Prefecture Inspector Hall, Yang Ling walked in with a smile and said, Official Chu, I have good news. Chu Xiu pretended to be surprised and said, Oh, what good news? Yang Ling smiled and said, The remnants of the Ghost King sect have finally been found. Mr. Gu has already gone there. Official Chu, you should also bring your men there quickly. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Since the people from Sword King sect have been found, let them go. Since they think that the people in the Jianzhou Prefecture Inspector Hall are trash, and that we don't put in the effort, why should we go there? Yang Ling smiled and said, You can't say that. After all, the people from the Ghost King sect appeared in the Guanzhong torture room. In the end, the Guanzhong torture room didn't even show up. This is a little too unreasonable. Moreover, this matter was ordered by Foster Father. Official Chu is Foster Father's favorite. He definitely doesn't want to disappoint Foster Father because of such a small matter, right? Chu Xiu took a deep look at Yang Ling. In the past, he really didn't pay attention to this person. Now that he saw it, he was not a simple person. This person was Wei Jiuduan's adopted son, but in reality, he did not hold much power. Also, in the entire Guanzhong torture hall, so many inspectors and Jianghu constables did not have any ill feelings towards him. This was not an easy feat, just like now. If it were someone else, they would have used Wei Jiuduan to suppress them. They wouldn't be like Yang Ling, who tactfully said a few words. As long as they didn't fall out, they would try their best not to have a conflict with the other party. Looking at Yang Ling, Chu Xiu suddenly smiled and said, Since Brother Yang said so, then I will give Brother Yang face and go. As he spoke, Chu Xiu called out, The Ghost Hand King, Du Guangzhong, and the others immediately left with Yang Ling. However, Yang Ling felt a little strange. Why did he feel that Chu Xiu seemed to be ready to go? The people that Chu Xiu brought were all his elite subordinates. These people seemed to have gathered together in advance, So now that Chu Xiu called out, everyone immediately attacked. This was very strange. However, Yang Ling did not pay much attention to it. After all, the most important thing right now was to clean up the remnants of the Ghost King sect. Meanwhile, on Gu Jiangliu's side, Wei Hanshan led him to a deserted villa at the junction of the Shang Prefecture and the Jian Prefecture. It was said that this place used to be the villa of a small family, but it was abandoned because the family was exterminated. Legend has it that every night, there would be the sound of ghosts wailing and wailing. It was the exterminated family that had come back to seek justice. It was daytime at this time, but this place still looked a bit gloomy and terrifying. It was no wonder that such a legend would spread. Gu Jianglu sneered and said, "The people of the Ghost King sect really know how to pick a place. This place matches their style. Let's just let them die here today." As he spoke, Gu Jianglu looked at Wei Hanshan and said, "Are you sure that they are here?" Wei Hanshan nodded and said, "They are definitely here. I saw 2 people of the Ghost King sect enter the villa ruins with my own eyes, but I was afraid of alerting them, so I didn't get too close." Gu Jianglu nodded, and there was a touch of coldness in his eyes. He said, "Hide your breath and kill them directly. Don't let any of them go." Wei Hanshan hesitated and said, "Mr. Gu, don't you want to wait for Chu Xiu to lead the attack?" He was thinking of letting Chu Xiu's subordinates go and exhaust them. Now that Chu Xiu hadn't arrived, they were going to attack? Gu Jianglu said indifferently, "Put away your little schemes. My Sword King city only wants the lives of the Ghost King sect's demons. If we are delayed by other matters and let the Ghost King sect escape, then the gains will not make up for the losses." Wei Hanshan didn't dare to say anything after hearing Gu Jiangliu's words. He could only do as he was told. With a wave of Gu Jiangliu's hand, the Sword King city's disciples immediately concealed their breath and followed Gu Jiangliu into the abandoned manor. Wei Hanshan could only helplessly follow behind them. Even in broad daylight, the abandoned manor still carried a trace of gloomy atmosphere. This atmosphere was very familiar to Gu Jiangliu. It was the stench of the Ghost King sect's demons. However, at this moment, a thick black gas suddenly bloomed under the feet of Gu Jiangliu and the others. Countless black fog wrapped around them, and a burst of ghostly wails could be heard. There seemed to be evil spirits in the black fog, constantly tearing at them. Gu Jiangliu didn't panic in the face of this scene. It was very normal. The Ghost King sect's people were not blind. It would be strange if they didn't notice them until they were right in front of them. Gu Jiangliu was also very familiar with this formation. It was the ghost formation of the Ghost King sect. This kind of formation was the easiest and fastest to set up. As long as there were more than 3 Three-Flower Realm martial artists of the Ghost King sect, they could set it up. By connecting the ghosts of the 3 people together with a secret method, they could set up the Yin Ghost formation. Moreover, the stronger the people involved in setting up the formation, and the more people there were, the stronger the power of the ghost formation would be. Great Light Brilliant Sun Sword Formation. Gu Jiangliu shouted, and a dazzling light burst from the long sword in his hand. The other disciples of Sword King City also did the same. With the help of the sword formation, it was as if a blazing sun had risen from the center of the Yin Ghost formation, and instantly tore through the darkness. Now only ghost cries were left in the Yin Ghost formation. They were horrifying and mournful ghost cries. Wei Hanshan, who was in the formation, didn't make a move. There was no need for him to do anything now. So he was also carefully observing the power of the Sword King City disciples when they attacked. The other party was truly worthy of being a member of the 5 major sword sects. Although he used a saber, he could feel the terror of the other party's powerful sword technique. In all fairness, in terms of individual strength, this group of Sword King City's martial artists far surpassed the Guanzhong punishment halls. After all, although most of the Jianghu arresters in the Guanzhong torture room were strong, they weren't really good at killing and fighting. Of course, there were exceptions such as the group of secret agents in the criminal division. The strength of this group of people was simply insanely strong. They were both in the Three-Flower Realm, but Wei Hanshan was not confident that he could fight them to a draw. Just as Wei Hanshan's thoughts were running wild, Gu Jiangliu and the others thought that they had broken the formation. and were ready to capture the remaining demonic cultivators of the Ghost King sect in one fell swoop. A black spear suddenly stabbed at Gu Jianglu from behind. The spear was very evil. The body of the spear was black, but the tip was a strange blood red. There was also a pungent smell of blood coming from the tip of the spear, as if the spear had been soaked in blood before. Gu Jianglu felt a strong sense of danger. At this moment, he suddenly tensed up. His gang qi erupted around him, and a raging flame surrounded him. Without looking back, the flaming river sword in his hand slashed behind him. The flaming river sword erupted with a loud bang, as if the flaming river was flowing backward. However, at this moment, a sharp ghost's howl suddenly rang in Gu Jiangliu's ears, causing his vision to darken. In the haze, he seemed to see an evil ghost biting at him. This made Gu Jiangliu's head suddenly hurt, and he let out a miserable howl. The sword in his hand also paused. It was this pause that allowed the strange demonic spear behind him to slash across his ribs, instantly taking away a piece of his flesh. Moreover, the demonic spear seemed to be able to suck blood. A large amount of blood was swallowed by the demonic spear, making the smell of blood on the spear even stronger. Gu Jianglu let out a muffled groan and retreated. Ignoring his injuries, his gang qi erupted around him and he looked behind him. When he saw the scene behind him, he couldn't help but show a hint of shock in his eyes. Blood-devouring demonic spear. Gue Ming, your injuries have actually healed. Impossible. You were hit by Uncle Master's sky-burning sword qi. It's impossible for you to recover so quickly. Behind Gu Jianglu was Gue Ming, who was holding the blood-devouring demonic spear, and a dozen Ghost King sect disciples. From the looks of it, they weren't preparing to refine pills in a hurry to heal their injuries. Instead, they were prepared to ambush them. Gu Jianglu was not an idiot. He immediately realized what was going on. This was a trap. Previously, Gu Jianglu and the people from Sword King City were the hunters, but now, the prey had set up a trap to kill them. Gu Jianglu turned to Wei Hanshan and said coldly, "How dare you collude with the Ghost King sect to frame us?" The traces of the Ghost King sect were discovered by Wei Hanshan, and Wei Hanshan even said that the people of the Ghost King sect had already gathered the elixirs and were preparing to refine pills. Now that they looked at it, the other party had even recovered from their injuries and were preparing to ambush them. Wei Hanshan was dumbfounded. He couldn't figure out what was going on at all. "Mr. Gu, it really wasn't me. I'm not an idiot. What's in it for me to collude with the Ghost King sect? Besides, even if I really colluded with the Ghost King sect, I wouldn't be stupid enough to come with you. Wouldn't that be courting death?" Looking at the ferocious faces of the Sword King City warriors, Wei Hanshan felt that he was simply unlucky. Things were going well. How did it turn out like this in the blink of an eye? What did it have to do with him that the Sword King City people were ambushed? Gu Jiangliu's eyes showed a trace of hesitation. Wei Hanshan indeed had no reason or motive to do this. Moreover, Wei Hanshan was currently surrounded by the Sword King City people, and he had insisted on coming. If he really colluded with the Ghost King sect and did this, wouldn't he be courting death? However, Gu Jianglu couldn't care less about Wei Hanshan at this time. Just now, he had been hit by the infernal ghost spear, and 1/10 of his qi and blood had been directly absorbed by the blood-devouring demon spear. The blood-devouring demon spear was a powerful divine weapon of the Ghost King sect. It could devour flesh and blood to nourish itself, and it could also nourish the user. As long as the user was touched by it, they would become stronger and stronger. Chapter 194. Gue Ming had a pleased look on his face when he saw the people of Sword King City, surrounded in the middle. After being chased for so long, the Ghost King sect's branch was almost annihilated. Now it was finally time for revenge. Gue Ming looked at Gu Jianglu and sneered. "Don't think so much. You're all going to die anyway. What's the use of thinking about who betrayed you now? Gu Jianglu, in the past, your Sword King City was despicable and shameless. You couldn't beat me in a head-on fight, so you sent experts to sneak attack me. You're even more shameless than the Devil Path. Now it's payback. How about it? My blood devourer spear doesn't feel good, does it?" Gu Jianglu frowned, looked at the wound under his ribs, and didn't speak. Since the Ghost King sect dared to set up an ambush here, it proved that they had absolute confidence. Moreover, Gui Ming wasn't someone to be trifled with. Although Ghost King sect had completely declined and did not even have a sect headquarters, only a few branches roaming the Jianghu, but Ghost King sect was after all a former evil faction big sect. A centipede died but not died. Gui Ming was the most outstanding disciple in this branch of the Ghost King sect. He was accepted as a personal disciple by the Ghost King sect's elder when he was young. He reached the 5 Chi's origin stage in his 30s, and was given the Ghost King sect's secret treasure, the Blood Devourer spear. When they fought with Gui Ming, they besieged him. Feeling that they couldn't take him down, someone found an elder of Sword King City, who was closest to the battlefield, and secretly attacked him. Even so, the Sword King City people only managed to seriously injure him, and let him escape with his people. Gu Jianglu wasn't confident that he could win against Ming Gui, who was at his peak. He regretted not waiting for Chu Xiu to come. If he were to wait for Chu Xiu to arrive, he would have hundreds of people under his command. When the time came, they would swarm in. No matter how strong the people of the Ghost King sect were, they would have to retreat temporarily. Gu Jianglu said in a deep voice, "Gui Ming, killing me won't do you any good. I'm the sword instructor of the War Sword Hall. The people I brought are also the elites of the War Sword Hall. You should know that only my combat sword hall is pursuing you. If you kill me, this matter will surely alarm the entire Sword King City. At that time, not only your Ghost King sect's branch, but all the other branches will also face endless pursuit. On the contrary, if you let me go today, we won't be able to catch you after you escape from Guanzhong. Everyone will live in peace. What do you think?" Gui Ming sneered and said, Gui Ming. Righteous sect is really a hypocrite. In the past you took advantage of me when I was the Ming sect and chased me to the sect. When there was no way, you would have killed me. Ming didn't care about King. Gui many people Yui King sect you. If your Sword King City has the guts, then come and kill us. Even if my Ghost King sect is destroyed, I'll make your Sword King City lose a tooth and greatly damage your vitality." After saying that, Gui Ming shouted, "Attack!" As his voice fell, a group of Ghost King sect disciples immediately followed Gui Ming and charged at the Sword King City's people. Seeing this scene, Gu Jianglu knew it was not good. He had probably driven Ghost Ming crazy during this period of time. Now Ghost Ming didn't care about anything else. He just wanted to kill him to avenge his death. Gu Jianglu clenched his teeth and suppressed his internal injuries. The flaming river sword in his hand swung out, and the crimson burning hot gang qi turned into a torrential flaming river. With a majestic sword aura, it charged towards the dark ghost. He still has a chance to live. Wei Hanshan had already sent someone to inform Lin Kaiyun. He had 2 Sword King City disciples with him. At the same time, Yang Ling had also informed Chu Xiu to come and kill the remaining members of Ghost King sect. Although Chu Xiu's intervention is likely to become the intervention of the entire Guanzhong torture room, at least their lives can be saved. Therefore, Gu Jianglu can only delay until Chu Xiu comes to help. But when the real battle starts, Gu Jianglu feels the pressure. Not to mention that he is seriously injured now. Even if he is at his peak, he is not a match for Gui Ming. The Ghost King sect's martial arts are famous for being strange and evil, but Gui Ming's fighting style is big and bold. The blood-devouring demon spear in his hand sweeps and stabs. Even if it is swept by the aura, it can still shatter Gu Jiangliu's sword momentum and devour his flesh and blood. At this time, Gui Ming, who is holding the blood-devouring demon spear, is like the legendary devil god of the ghost domain, extremely terrifying. Moreover, Gui Ming is not only good at close combat killing methods, but also some secret skills passed down in the Ghost King sect. Most of these secret skills are extremely evil and have the effect of disturbing people's minds, such as the evil ghost secret skill. His attacks are fierce and violent, coupled with all kinds of strange secret skills. After more than 10 moves, Gu Jianglu is already at a disadvantage. Even his body has been cut by the blood-devouring demon spear twice. A large amount of qi and blood is absorbed by the spear, making the bright red color on the spear tip look extremely magnificent. His opponent is getting stronger and stronger, but he is getting weaker and weaker. Gu Jianglu is already a little desperate. He gritted his teeth and directly spat out a mouthful of blood essence, which is attached to the flame river sword in his hand. In an instant, the long sword is burning with raging flames. Rather than letting the blood essence be devoured by Gui Ming's blood-devouring demon spear, it is better for him to release it and burn it, in exchange for the greatest power. Gu Jianglu waved his sword. In an instant, a mighty river of flames appeared in front of him, with surging sword chi and scorching aura. Gu Jiangliu's figure becomes ethereal. At this time, in the eyes of Gui Ming and the others, Gu Jianglu is sublimating to the extreme. When his sword completely falls, what they see is no longer Gu Jianglu, but a blurry divine shadow behind him, worshipping the sun. Scorching Sun Divine Sword. This sword technique was created by the seniors of the Combat Sword Hall after observing a small clan in the Western Desert. That small clan is very weak. Out of the tens of thousands of people in the clan, there is not a single warrior at the Five Chi's origin realm. But this small clan has an extremely magical sacrificial secret method, which is to worship the sun in exchange for their own power. To them, the blazing sun in the sky was also a living being, and they viewed it as a god. Every year, when the sun was at its strongest, they would choose to use the blood of all their clansmen as sacrifices and ignite it with a secret technique, allowing the young clansmen to feel the power of the sun shining down and experience the grace of God. At that time, the senior of the Sword King city directly used his own blood as a guide to ignite the power of the sun, turning into a god, and made this amazing sword slash. The warriors of the Sword King city will not worship anyone except their own sword. They also don't think that there is a god in this world. Once the Scorching Sun Divine Sword is used, the swordsman himself is his god. The Scorching Sun Divine Sword is displayed. After all, this is a move that Gu Jianglu burned his essence and blood to fight for his life. In addition, the power of the sun, and the sun in the sword has a certain restraining effect on the extremely evil Ghost King Sect's cultivation method. Therefore, Ghost Ming had to temporarily retreat. The blood-devouring demon spear in his hand burst out a dazzling bloody light, trying to stop this sword. At the same time, the power of the evil ghost behind him burst out, but it was not an attack. Instead, it turned into a gloomy ghost mist to offset the power of the sun and the sun. At this time, seeing Gu Jianglu start to fight for his life, Wei Hanshan, who was also fighting with the group of people from the Ghost King sect, showed a strange look in his eyes. At this time, Wei Hanshan was also very miserable. He was besieged by 2 warriors at the Three-Flower Realm of the Ghost King sect, and had already suffered serious injuries. It should be known that Wei Hanshan was named by Chu Xiu to kill. The Ghost King sect could be considered to have kept their word, and directly sent 2 warriors at the Three-Flower Realm to kill Wei Hanshan. After a while, Wei Hanshan was seriously injured. This time, Wei Hanshan finally knew what it meant to suffer a double loss. He originally wanted to trick Chu Xiu this time, but he didn't expect that Chu Xiu would fail. He was afraid that he would die here. The people of the Ghost King sect had a life and death feud with Sword King City, but they didn't have such a big grudge with Wei Hanshan. Wei Hanshan also didn't want to wait for death here. So at this time, when he saw Gui Ming being defeated by Gu Jianglu, Wei Hanshan directly made a move, and the gang qi around his body suddenly burst out, and he fled outside. Wei Hanshan's movement suddenly stunned the people of the Ghost King sect. They didn't expect Wei Hanshan to abandon the others at this time and escape for his life. The people of Sword King City also didn't expect Wei Hanshan to do such a thing. They all glared at him, but there was nothing they could do. Just when the people of the Ghost King sect were thinking about whether to chase or not, dozens of warriors came in from outside the ruins of the villa. Among them, the weakest was at the innate realm. It was Chu Xiu, Yangling, and the others. They were all elites under Chu Xiu's command. Seeing Chu Xiu coming, Gu Jianglu, who was fighting desperately, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he was infuriated by Chu Xiu's disrespect towards him, and even dared to threaten him, he couldn't help but feel as if he'd just survived a calamity when he saw Chu Xiu coming to his rescue. At this time, Wei Hanshan's mood was almost the same as Gu Jiangliu's. Although they were enemies before, at this time, Chu Xiu as an enemy could save his life. However, whether it was Wei Hanshan or Gu Jianglu, They didn't notice that the people of the Ghost King sect opposite also had a strange smile on their faces. Gu Jianglu shouted at Chu Xiao. Why are you so slow? Why did you only come now? Don't waste time. Immediately surround the people of the Ghost King sect. Don't let a single one of them escape. Wei Hanshan also said to Chu Xiao. Since you're here, then don't delay any longer. Let's temporarily put aside our grudges and make our move against the people from the Ghost King sect first. That's right. Do you have any healing medicinal pills? Give some to me. The Ghost King sect's evil demons are really ruthless. Looking at Wei Hanshan in front of him, Chu Xiao's mouth showed a strange smile. Healing pills? I have something more effective than healing pills. Wei Hanshan asked subconsciously, what is it? As soon as his voice fell, Chu Xiao had already unsheathed the red sleeve blade in his hand. The ferocious crimson blood refined divine gang burst out. The blade light swept across, and the killing intent suddenly rose. Chapter 195. No one present could react to Chu Xiao's sudden attack. Wei Hanshan waited until Chu Xiao's cold saber aura, which carried the power of blood, was about to reach him before he subconsciously took out the long saber in his hand. His ice aura erupted, barely blocking the attack. However, he was forced to retreat more than 10 steps. Chu Xiao, are you crazy? How dare you attack me at a time like this? Wei Hanshan roared at Yi Xiao with a ferocious expression. In his eyes, Chu Xiao was simply crazy. He actually attacked him in public at such a critical moment. Wei Hanshan and Chu Xiao had also fought before, but that was just a conflict. It was considered an internal matter. Now that they were facing a foreign enemy, Chu Xiao suddenly attacked him. This was simply killing each other. If this matter was reported to the higher-ups, Wei Juduan would be the first to not let Chu Xiao go. On the other side, Chu Xiao acted as if he did not hear Wei Hanshan's words. As the saber aura swept out, Wei Hanshan was instantly forced to the extreme. After all, Wei Hanshan was a warrior in the three-flower realm at one's prominence at his peak. It was not so easy for Chu Xiao to defeat him. However, Wei Hanshan had already been injured in the battle with the warriors of the Ghost King sect. He did not even have half of his strength left. At this time, Wei Hanshan could only be crushed by Chu Xiao. At this time, even the people of Sword King City could not understand what was going on. Was there some kind of irreconcilable hatred between the two inspectors of the Guanzhong torture room? They actually attacked at such a critical moment. Yang Ling, who had been following Chu Xiao, looked at the two people in the field with a horrified gaze. He had felt that something was wrong with Chu Xiao. It was only now that he realized what was wrong. This time, Chu Xiao did not come to save people but to kill. Yang Ling even guessed something deeper, but he did not dare to think anymore. Instead, he shouted at Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao, attacking your own people at this time, are you crazy? Even foster father won't let you off for doing such a thing in public. Just as Yang Ling was about to make a move to stop Chu Xiao, Tanya suddenly took a step forward and stood in front of Yang Ling. The dragon-tail soul-chasing dart in his hand flew up and down under the control of his stellar energy. With a strange smile on his lips, he said, Lord Yang, there are some things that are better not seen. It's best for you to stand here and not move. Otherwise, you know the consequences. At this moment, Yan Bugui had also walked behind Yang Ling. The giant sword behind him slammed onto the ground, emitting a loud sound. A powerful pressure instantly came over, causing Yang Ling's heart to sink. These two subordinates of Chu Xiao were not to be trifled with. And he, Yang Ling, had followed Wei Juduan for so many years. He had the ability, and he could be considered to be good at using money and power. However, in terms of combat strength, not to mention Yan Bugui and Tanya, he was not confident even if it was just one of them. And at this time, looking at Chu Xiao's merciless attacks, Wei Hanshan was already in despair. Chu Xiao was simply aiming to take his life. When he saw Chu Xiao coming, he thought that it was a savior, but he did not expect it to be a killer. Wei Hanshan clenched his teeth, and the ice chi in his hands suddenly exploded. Wisps of frost condensed in his hands, and even his face was dyed with a pale color. He was ready to fight with his life. As long as he could escape, he would definitely go to the main hall to complain about Chu Xiao. Even if he would be punished by Wei Jieduan, he would not let Chu Xiu turn over a new leaf. It was a pity that Wei Hanshan's idea was going to be in vain, because from the beginning, Chu Xiu was not prepared to give him a chance to live. The dark devil Qi lingered on top of Chu Xiu's red sleeve blade, and with one slash, the gates of hell opened. The power of the 3 blades of Avicii suddenly erupted. At this time, Chu Xiu was simply more like a devil than the martial artists of the Ghost King sect. Wei Hanshan might be able to block this blade in his heyday, but the current Wei Hanshan was directly blasted away by the first blade of Chu Xiu's 3 blades of Avicii, and even the blade in his hand was cut off. At this time, Chu Xiu did not use the second blade of the 3 blades of Avicii. Instead, he directly sheathed his blade and performed the great Vajra wheel seal. The golden Buddha's aura burst out, and the Vajra glared angrily, suppressing the world and subduing the devil. As this seal fell, Wei Hanshan's arms were directly twisted into the shape of a fried dough twist, and a large amount of blood gushed out of his mouth. At this time, Chu Xiu directly performed the great sacrificial grappling hand, which he had not used for a long time. He grabbed Wei Hanshan in his hand and threw him towards Ghost Ming. He said faintly, "This is for you. The qi and blood of a martial artist in the 3-flower realm is very good." Ghost Ming sneered and stabbed out with the blood-devouring demon spear in his hand, directly penetrating Wei Hanshan's body. In the blink of an eye, the demonic blood-devouring spear emitted a glaring blood-red light. Almost instantly, Wei Hanshan was sucked dry. With a shake of the nether ghost spear, Wei Hanshan's body instantly shattered into a pile of corpse fragments. His original shape could not be seen. Seeing this, Chu Xiu shrugged. Destroying the corpse without leaving a trace was perfect. However, until his death, Wei Hanshan did not understand when Chu Xiu had colluded with the Ghost King sect. All this time, Wei Hanshan had thought that he was scheming against Chu Xiu. It was not until his death that he realized that it was Chu Xiu who was scheming against him, and he still foolishly jumped into it. At this time, the scene was silent. Seeing the interaction between Chu Xiu and Ghost Ming, even an idiot would know what this meant. Gu Jiangliu's initial guess was not wrong. This was a trap, a setup. Indeed, someone was colluding with the Ghost King sect, but that person was not Wei Hanshan, but Chu Xiu. Even Yang Ling did not expect this. He thought that Chu Xiu had just planned to deal with Wei Hanshan, which was an internal conflict in the Guanzhong torture room, and kill with a borrowed knife. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would be so bold as to collude with the Ghost King sect and set up this trap? Not only did he want to kill Wei Hanshan, but he also wanted to kill the people of Sword King City. At this time, apart from being bold and crazy, Yang Ling could not think of any words to describe Chu Xiu. Gu Jianglu looked at Chu Xiu, gnashed his teeth and said, "Chu Xiu, this time, Sword King City will not rest until one of us is dead." Chu Xiu held the knife and said expressionlessly, "Not rest until one of us is dead? I'm afraid you won't have the chance." After saying that, Chu Xiu said to Gui Ming, "You guys attack, I'll hold the line from the side. After all, this is the Guanzhong torture room. With so many experienced constables here, it's not good for me to directly attack the people of Sword King City." Gui Ming sneered and said, "You righteous sects are really troublesome. You want to be a prostitute and still want to maintain a chastity?" Although that was what he said, Gui Ming did not care. If Chu Xiu did not attack, then he would not attack. In any case, the people of Sword King City were like turtles in a jar. Killing them was only a matter of time. As soon as his voice fell, Gui Ming waved his hand, and the warriors of the Ghost King sect immediately rushed towards the people of Sword King City. Chu Xiu had people surround the place to prevent the people of Sword King City from escaping. Then he moved towards Yang Ling, looking deeply at Chu Xiu. Yang Ling did not scold him. He just said in a low voice, "You madman." At this moment, scolding Chu Xiu would only be courting death. However, in his opinion, Chu Xiu's actions were that of a madman. Killing his colleagues, colluding with the demonic path, and even helping the remnants of the Ghost King sect to kill the people of Sword King City. Every one of these was a crime worthy of death. However, it was also because of this that Yang Ling felt even more despair. Just like what Tangya had said, some things were better left unseen than seen. Each of these things was enough to kill Chu Xiu many times over. He was not Chu Xiu's man, and he was Wei Jiuduan's adopted son. Yet after seeing these things, would Chu Xiu let him live? Looking at Yang Ling, Chu Xiu said faintly, "In life, one cannot live without madness." Those who can reach such a high position are either supreme experts or true madmen. In the past, the previous hall master, great hero Chu Kuanga, single-handedly fought against an army of 10,000. At that time, everyone thought he was a madman. In the end, he became a legend in the pugilistic world. Now, when Master Guan Siyu took over the Guanzhong torture room, he was incorruptible and showed no mercy. He killed outsiders and even his own people. At that time, people said that Master Guan was a madman, and said that he would destroy the Guanzhong torture room that had been passed down for hundreds of years. In the end, Guanzhong torture room stood in the center of the three kingdoms, and no one could replace it. Hearing this, Yang Ling could not help but say in a sarcastic tone, "You mean that you can compare yourself to Chu Jiuxia and Master Guan?" Chu Xiu looked indifferent and said, "Why not? When you see a strong person, you should be in awe and have the ambition to replace them. You don't even believe in yourself. Do you think that others will believe in you? Who knows, maybe after 100 or 1,000 years my name, Chu Xiu, will spread even further than Chu Jiuxia and Master Guan." Yang Ling sneered and did not speak. Now he was a prisoner, and was held hostage by Chu Xiu and the others. Of course, he did not dare to say anything too outrageous. If this was any other time, he would definitely mock Chu Xiu for being ignorant, and not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. While Chu Xiu and Yang Ling were talking, the outcome of the battle between the Ghost King sect and Sword King City was decided. The people of the Sword King City were actually not weak. However, because of the preemptive sneak attack of the Ghost King sect, Gu Jianglu was injured. In addition, there was Chu Xiu beside him, looking like a tiger watching its prey. Under such pressure, how much strength could they exert? Gu Jianglu was the first to be killed. His scorching sun divine sword burned his qi and blood. After one strike he could not kill Ming Gui. After that his strength fell greatly. Ming Gui used his blood-swallowing demon spear and the evil ghost's secret skill to torture him to death. Of course, it was not easy for Ming Gui either. He was injured and consumed a lot of energy. As Gu Jianglu died, the people of the Sword King City completely collapsed. Some wanted to fight to the death, some wanted to escape, but they were all stopped by the people of the Ghost King sect. After a quarter of an hour, the people of the Sword King City were all killed. The people of the Ghost King sect were panting. They were not unscathed in the series of killings. The cultivators of the Sword King City fought to the death, but only a few of the Ghost King sect's cultivators were killed. The others were either injured or consumed too much energy. Everyone present subconsciously took out pills and tossed them into their mouths to refine. At the sight of this, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a peculiar expression. Chapter 196. Seeing that the Ghost King sect's people were recuperating, Chu Xiu walked over and smiled. "Congratulations everyone. Now that you've dealt with Sword King City's people, you don't have to worry about being hunted down. From now on, you can fly as high as you want. Isn't that great?" Gui Ming shook his head and sneered. "How can it be that easy? We killed Sword King City's people, but at the same time, we also angered them. Sword King City won't just ignore the deaths of so many elites. My Ghost King sect will have to be more careful in the future. Who knows, we might be hunted down by Sword King City." After saying that, Gui Ming suddenly turned to Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu, our cooperation this time is pretty good. I also have something I need Official Chu's help with." Chu Xiu raised his brows and said, "Oh, what is it?" Gui Ming said in a deep voice, "Lord Chu, you know the situation of our Ghost King sect now. We lack everything. Previously, we had no choice but to stay in Guanzhong because we lacked healing elixirs. I heard that Official Chu's business is pretty good. Among the inspectors in Guanxi, you're the best at making money. Therefore, I want to borrow some things from you, Official Chu, for when my Ghost King sect is being hunted down. The herbs you gave us last time are pretty good. Give me 10 times more, and it should be enough." Chu Xiu sneered. "Your Ghost King sect is really good at scheming. You said you want to borrow, but how can I find you after you leave Guangzhou? Moreover, those herbs are priceless treasures. You want 10 times more? Even if I turn the entire Jianzhou prefecture upside down, I still can't gather that much. Gui Ming said. If you can't gather that much, you can buy it from other prefectures. Hearing this, everyone felt that the atmosphere was a bit off. It didn't seem like they were borrowing anything. A hint of coldness flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. What if I don't lend it to you? Gui Ming faintly said. Official Chu, don't be so confident. My Ghost King sect has not left Guangzhou yet. The death of someone from Sword King City is a big deal, and the death of an inspector from your Guangzhou torture room is also a big deal. Right now, my Ghost King sect is shouldering all the blame, while you Official Chu are innocent. My Ghost King sect has sacrificed so much, isn't it worth it? The threat in Ghost Ming's tone was obvious. Anyway, now that the enemy was dead, the Ghost King sect was not afraid of the Ghost King sect. Ghost King sect happened to have something on Chu Xiu. If he did not take this opportunity to blackmail Chu Xiu, Ghost King sect would feel that he had suffered a loss. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly laughed. That laughter was very creepy, making the Ghost King sect's Devil Path martial artists feel a little uncomfortable. Ghost Ming snorted. What are you laughing at? What's so funny? After laughing, Chu Xiu said faintly, to be honest, I was a little embarrassed when I schemed against your Ghost King sect. After all, you helped me a lot this time. But now, I have nothing to be embarrassed about. It seems that it is better to be honest. While you are scheming against others, others are also scheming against you. After a pause, Chu Xiu said, don't mind it. This sentence is for me. I will be more careful when I scheme against others in the future. Chu Xiu's words made the Ghost King and the others speechless. They thought that Chu Xiu would say that he would not scheme against others in the future. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would say such a thing? After that, Chu Xiu directly said to the Ghost King, okay, let's do it, lest things change. The Ghost Hand King nodded, and took out a small medicine bottle from his chest. He pulled out the lid and injected his inner force into it. Immediately, a large amount of medicine powder floated out, and shrouded the people from the Ghost King sect. Ghost Ming felt something was wrong when he heard Chu Xiu's words. But before he could warn them, the Ghost King had already taken action. Seeing the medicine powder falling, Ghost Ming's expression suddenly changed. He shouted, hold your breath. He subconsciously thought that the powders were poisonous. However, as the powders fell on their bodies, Gui Ming was surprised to find that the powders were made from elixirs of the 5 elements. Not only were they not poisonous, they were even beneficial to the body. Moreover, it was useless even if they held their breath. This kind of elixir was integrated into their internal force, and could be introduced into their bodies through their genuine qi. Ghost Ming looked at Chu Xiu and snorted. What the hell are you doing? However, as soon as he finished speaking, Gui Ming's expression suddenly changed. At this time, inside Gui Ming's body, there was a sharp pain in his 5 viscera, as if a knife was being twisted in his body. His internal force and genuine qi began to flow backward. This was the symptom of internal force backfiring and qi deviation. And not only Ghost Ming, but some other warriors of the Ghost King sect were also in the same situation. They were all those who had used the elixirs given by Chu Xiu, or had just taken the elixirs. The Ghost King walked out with a sneer and said, it's not a good feeling to have the 5 elements reversed, right? Some of the ancient books of your Ghost King sect are inherited from the Taoist branch. Unfortunately, you don't understand it. Using the 5 viscera to make elixirs, the 5 viscera's attribute is death, and the elixir's attribute is life. The combination of life and death turns into yin and yang, evolving the 5 elements of heaven and earth. The refining method of the 5 qis gathering elixir is really exquisite. But didn't you notice that there was something wrong with the batch of elixirs you received before? Ghost Ming's expression changed and he said coldly, since then, you have been scheming against my Ghost King sect? But I have checked that batch of elixirs carefully. There is absolutely no problem. The Ghost King said proudly, didn't you notice that the spiritual qi on the elixirs is a bit abnormal? It's very simple. I just ground the other 5 elixirs into powder, and mixed them into the elixirs I gave you, so that the two become one. Even when refining elixirs, you can't find it. But I changed the position of the attributes. For the fire elixirs, I added the water elixir powder. For the wood elixirs, I added the metal elixir powder. In the elixirs I gave you, I added a total of 4 kinds of powders. Now it is the 5th kind. The power of the 5 elements can be used to cure diseases, but if it is used against each other, how do you feel now? As he said this, the Ghost King lightly flicked the bottle in his hand. The pride in his eyes was obvious. He had learned a lot in this life. Unfortunately, when he was in the Blue Dragon Society, he could use very little of it. Now that he was under Chushio's command, he could finally play a role. After listening to the Ghost King, Ghost Ming understood that he had been schemed against by Chushio from the beginning. Although it was said to be cooperation, Chushio had actually planned to kill them from the beginning. At this time, the true chi in Ghost Ming's body was in a mess. His meridians were flowing in reverse, and the backlash was even more serious than when he was injured. Ghost Ming shouted at the others, "Charge! Charge out!" Their Ghost King sect had more than one branch. As long as they were given a chance, they would skin Chushio alive and cut him into pieces in the future. You still want to go out? Stay here. If the people of Sword King City die, you will die with them. Only then can you explain. As soon as he finished speaking, the red sleeve knife in Chushio's hand bloomed with boundless black chi. The way of Avicii slashed down 3 times. With a loud bang, the blood-devouring demon spear in Ghost Ming's hand was directly cut away by Chushio's knife. Ghost Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, the true chi in his body was flowing in reverse, tearing his meridians. In this state, he could not use his own gang chi and internal force at all. Therefore, he began to mobilize his mental strength as he retreated. In an instant, endless darkness enveloped Chushio. The evil ghost descended, and the sound of ghosts crying and gods howling pierced the ears. Last time, when Chushio fought with the people of Ghost King sect, he was caught off guard by this evil ghost technique. But this time, Chushio did not panic. He directly formed a seal with both hands. This time he used a very strange seal. Fighting character formula, Outer Lion Seal. As the seal finger tapped, a thunderous sound was heard. In an instant, the Buddha's light flashed and the sound of thunder flashed. The thunderous sound was sonorous and loud. An ear-piercing explosion was heard. Under the deafening sound of thunder, the evil ghost was directly blown away. The Great Light Temple's 9 changes lion roar. The evil ghost was blown away by Chushio's move, and Ghost Ming's expression suddenly changed. The martial artists of Ghost King sect were most afraid of Buddhist martial artists. The techniques of the Buddhist martial artists were too effective against the martial artists of the Ghost King sect, especially the 9 transformation lion roar, which had the greatest lethality against the Een ghost that had not yet condensed into a form. With one roar, the Een ghost would be directly smashed. But then Ghost Ming felt that something was wrong. It should not be the 9 changes lion roar. The Great Light Temple's 9 changes lion roar used internal force as the foundation, and the awe-inspiring Buddhist Dharma as the guide. It shouted a thunderous Buddhist sound with 9 changes. However, Chushio's attack was much simpler than the 9 transformation lion's roar. It was purely the extreme evolution of the Buddhist sound's power. It was guided by hand seals, while the sound was produced from the tapping of the hand seals. But at this time, Ghost Ming did not have much time to think. Chushio directly rushed forward, and took out the Great Vajra Wheel seal. The Vajra glared, suppressing evil. A dazzling Buddha's light burst out in front of Ghost Ming. The Buddha's light entered his body and instantly tore the meridians in Ghost Ming's body. Blood kept gushing out. Ghost Ming's face showed a ferocious look. So many people of Sword King City had failed to kill him, but now he was going to die in the hands of a physical invulnerability realm martial artist like Chushio. He was not willing to die. A gloomy ghost chi appeared in Ghost Ming's right hand. At this time, he no longer cared about his meridians being torn. All the blood and chi in his body were condensed in his right hand. His body was almost sucked dry in an instant, like a mummy. Only his right hand was still red like blood. And with a dense ghost chi, it fell toward Chushio. Blood transformation divine claw. This claw was a fatal move. As long as the blood transformation divine claw touched a trace of Chuxio's blood, the ghost qi and blood poison would immediately infect Chuxio's body and turn all the blood in his body into pus. Chapter 197. In Minggui's eyes, it was all his fault that the people of the Ghost King sect had ended up like this. He trusted Chuxio and fell into his trap. That was why he ended up like this. He could not absolve himself from the blame. Among the warriors of the Ghost King sect, although Minggui was young, he was very responsible. Since he had done something wrong, he would solve it himself. He would risk his life to drag Chuxio down with him. This would be an explanation to the other people of the Ghost King sect. When the blood-killing divine claw fell, the sound of ghosts crying and gods howling was heard. It became extremely shrill and horrible. Chuxio's expression did not change. He just made a seal with both hands. The moment the seal was formed, his aura became extremely stable. It was as solid as a mountain. Confrontation formula, Duga seal. Previously, when facing the black divine claw of the Heavenly Sin branch leader, Chuxio had used Duga seal to resist it. That was how he had survived the Heavenly Sin branch leader's attack. Now, although Minggui's blood-killing divine claw was terrifying, it was still inferior to the black divine claw of the Heavenly Sin branch leader. Of course, the biggest difference was their strength. The oneness of heaven and men realm and the 5 qis collecting in origin realm were only a small realm apart, but their strengths were worlds apart. The 5 qis collecting in origin realm was considered a master in the whole Jianghu. But the oneness of heaven and men realm was called a great master, the strongest existence below the grandmaster. Boundless ghost qi and blood qi suddenly burst out and hit Dugu seal. Suddenly, there was a violent explosion of gang qi. The vigorous gang qi condensed into a huge mountain in front of Minggui. The power of the blood-killing divine claw kept eroding the huge mountain, but it could never reach the bottom. Go to hell! Minggui shouted. The ghost qi and blood qi around him suddenly burst out. His blood-killing divine claw shone brightly. Finally, it reached the front of Chuxio. With a light sound, the seal was broken. However, this last attack also exhausted Ghost Ming's strength. The blood qi on his right hand dissipated. He was less than 3 feet away from Chuxio, but in the end with a loud bang, he fell to the ground reluctantly. Chuxio let out a long sigh of relief. The desperate attack of a 5 qis collecting origin realm expert was not that easy to resist. His Duguin had used all his strength to exhaust the opponent to death. Looking around, Chuxio spat out a word coldly, kill. As soon as he finished speaking, Chuxio's subordinates rushed towards the Ghost King sect's warriors, suppressing and strangling them. In fact, these warriors of the Ghost King sect were stronger than Chuxio's men in terms of strength. However, the warriors of the Ghost King sect had already fought a bloody battle with the people of Sword King City. Although they managed to kill their opponents, they were also exhausted and seriously injured. Now Ghost Hand King had stirred up the chaos of the 5 elements in their bodies, causing their meridians and internal energy to flow chaotically. Their strength had fallen to the extreme. Moreover, after Chuxio killed Minggui, the morale of the Ghost King sect's warriors was extremely low. They were filled with despair and could not muster any fighting spirit at all. They were easily killed by Chuxio's subordinates. Among the corpses on the ground, Chuxio walked up to Minggui's corpse and took out a few things. Most of these things were cultivation methods of the Ghost King sect. There were also a few treasures passed down by the Ghost King sect. He did not know what they were used for. The only exceptions were 2 items. One of them was a secret box that had already been opened. Inside it were 2 cultivation techniques that were written on the skin of an unknown beast. The words written on them were very familiar to Chuxio, causing him to reveal a look of astonishment. Soon after, it turned into a look of joy. The other thing was a piece of iron. To be precise, it seemed to be a fragment of something like a token. It was only half the size of a palm and was completely black. There were some runes and patterns on it, but Chuxio could not recognize any of them. Moreover, this iron piece was half the size of a palm and weighed more than 10 kilograms. Chuxio could not see what material it was made of. In short, it should be very strong. At least, with Chuxio's current strength, he could crush gold and iron. However, he could not even leave a trace on this iron piece. After putting these two things into his bosom, Chu Xiu did not touch the rest of the things. The remnants of the Ghost King sect still had a lot of good things in their hands. However, compared with the two things he had obtained, they were not much help to Chu Xiu. If he took all of them, Chu Xiu would definitely attract attention. Therefore, it was better to hand all these things over to the headquarters. At that time, whether it was the remnants of the Sword King city or the Ghost King sect, if they wanted something, they could directly go to the headquarters of the punishment hall. It would have nothing to do with Chu Xiu. As for the two things missing, everyone present was Chu Xiu's confidants. Since the outsiders were all dead, who would say anything? Thinking of this, Chu Xiu suddenly looked back. No, there was also an outsider here. With a smile on his face, Chu Xiu walked up to Yang Ling and said with a smile, "Brother Yang, the remnants of the Ghost King sect have been annihilated. There is one less trouble in the Guanxi area. However, I see that you are a little unhappy." A smile that was uglier than crying appeared on Yang Ling's face. He was about to be silenced, so how could he be happy? He had colluded with the Ghost King sect, killed his colleagues, and set up a trap to frame the Sword King city. Each of these things added up was enough to kill Chu Xiu 100 times. However, he had seen all of them. At this time, even if he begged Chu Xiu not to kill him, he was willing to submit to Chu Xiu and would never say anything about these things. Would Chu Xiu believe him? If it were him, he would not believe it either. However, at this moment, it was useless to curse and beg for mercy. Yang Ling was completely disheartened. He could only wait for death here. However, at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Brother Yang, don't look like you're facing death with equanimity. Who said I was going to kill you? Do I, Chu Xiu, look like such a cruel person? Do I want to kill people so easily?" Before Yang Ling could speak, Tanya, who was standing behind Chu Xiu, nodded. Then he was immediately glared at by the Ghost Hand King. At this time, Yang Ling could no longer care about what Chu Xiu said. He only heard Chu Xiu say that he would not kill him. He could not help but say in a trembling voice, "What did you say? Official Chu, you really won't kill me?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "Not only will I not kill you, but I will also give you a big gift. You have been Wei Jiuduan's adopted son for so long, but you did not even get the position of patrol. I'm afraid you are very unwilling, right? Now that Wei Hanshan is dead, are you interested in his position as the Shang Prefecture's patrol?" When Yang Ling heard this, he immediately revealed a look of disbelief. Of course, he was interested in the position of patrol. It could even be said that he yearned for it. He had served Wei Jiuduan for so many years, all for power. Unfortunately, Wei Jiuduan had always been unwilling to give him this power. Previously, Wei Jiuduan said that after Yang Ling retired, he would help him get the position, and even let Chu Xiu assist him. As for Wei Jiuduan's promise, Yang Ling did not know if it was true or false, but to let Chu Xiu assist him, that was purely a fool's dream. Looking at Chu Xiu's bold and ruthless manner, was this the kind of person who would submit to others? Moreover, just now, Chu Xiu had directly called Wei Jiuduan's name, and there was not even a hint of respect in his tone. From this point, one could see Chu Xiu's attitude. However, Yang Ling did not understand why Chu Xiu did not kill him, and even gave him the position of patrol. It should be known that it was very normal for a patrol to be in charge of 2 prefectures, as long as one had the ability. After being silent for a while, Yang Ling then asked, "Why me? Wei Hanshan is dead, but you have destroyed the Ghost King sect and made a great contribution. You can manage the Shang State Prefecture." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Of course it is to keep a low profile, and also to not provoke your harsh and ungrateful foster father. I have just arrived, although I have the ability and power, but holding 2 prefectures in my hands, it is still easy for people to be jealous and target me. I am not afraid of them, but I do not want to cause trouble. Also, you should know what kind of character your foster father has. He is very suspicious. Of course, the more benefits I can give him, the better, but he is reluctant to give me the slightest bit of power. In the past, when Wei Hanshan held 2 prefectures in his hands, he also gave him a lot of benefits. In the end, he was also suspicious of Wei Hanshan in the end, and warned him many times. In the end, he even used the matter of Wei Hanshan's complaint to deprive him of the Qin State Prefecture. Wei Hanshan had followed him for many years, but in the end he ended up like this. I do not feel that my position in Wei Jiuduan's heart is higher than Wei Hanshan, so I cannot take the Shang State Prefecture. Or should I say I cannot take it directly? Yang Ling laughed bitterly and said, I understand what official Chu means. What do I need to do? Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, Smart. I, Chu Xiu, also like to deal with smart people the most. I can give you the Shang State Prefecture, but it must be under my indirect control. It just so happens that you have seen so many of my secrets. To be fair, I should also have your secrets. Yang Ling was stunned and said, What do you mean, official Chu? Chu Xiu did not answer him, he just said, Give me your weapon. Yang Ling was stunned, but he still gave Chu Xiu a relatively ordinary Fourth Revolution artifact longsword in his hand. Drawing out the longsword, Chu Xiu stuffed the hilt into Yang Ling's hand. He pointed to the corpses of Sword King City martial artists on the ground and said, Find a random corpse and leave a sword mark on it. You are the constable of the Guanzhong torture room. You should know where to leave the obvious sword mark. Holding the sword in his hand, Yang Ling immediately understood what Chu Xiu meant by the secret. Chu Xiu wanted to leave a weakness that could be used against him at any time. It was a fatal weakness. Stabbing the sword meant that he would forever submit to Chu Xiu. Otherwise, even if he fell out with Chu Xiu could use this matter at any time, saying that he colluded with the Ghost King sect to frame Sword King City. However, if he did not stab the corpse, the consequences would be obvious. Therefore, Yang Ling could only smile helplessly and walk towards the corpse of a Sword King City martial artist, stabbing the sword. Chapter 198. The conditions that Chu Xiu offered made Yang Ling unable to refuse. It was not because of the position of patrol envoy, but because one would die and the other would live. If the sword pierced through, he would live. If he refused, he would die. It was best to choose between life and death. Therefore, Yang Ling made a choice that most people would make. After the sword pierced through, Chu Xiu took away his sword and handed it to Ghost Hand King. He smiled and said, I will keep this sword of yours for now. Just tell others that it was damaged during the battle. Also, if you become a patrol envoy in the future, it would be too embarrassing if you still use a lower grade 4th Revolution artifact. Even if you don't get a 5th Revolution artifact, you should at least get a high grade, or even a supreme grade 4th Revolution artifact. When Yang Ling heard this, he immediately smiled bitterly. He could not remember how many times he had smiled helplessly tonight. This sword was the evidence. It was lost now, but if he dared to resist Chu Xiu, then this lost sword would become the real evidence. Chu Xiu smiled at Yang Ling and said, Brother Yang, there is no need to frown. This is also an opportunity. If not for this, you will probably have to wait until Wei Jiuduan retires, before you can become a patrol envoy. After this matter, you can first build support for Wei Jiuduan. I will give you a batch of money to curry favor with Wei Jiuduan. At that time, Wei Jiuduan will definitely ask me if I am interested in this position. If I fight for this position, you probably won't have a chance. But I can't not fight for it because it will arouse suspicion. Anyway, I naturally have a way to make Wei Jiuduan give the Shang State Prefecture to you. At that time, you just have to prepare to take over. Yang Ling nodded and directly bowed to Chu Xiu and said, Many thanks, official Chu. From now on, this subordinate will only follow official Chu's lead. Yang Ling was also a smart person. He knew that he had not been kicked away by Wei Jiuduan even after serving him for so many years. Right now Chu Xiu had something on him. Even if he really became an inspector in the future, this position would only be temporarily taken care of by him for Chu Xiu. Therefore he was very open-minded. From now on his position would always be under Chu Xiu. On the surface he was a colleague, but secretly he could only be a subordinate. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, All right, bring the corpses back and report to the Punishment Hall branch. The cultivators of Sword King City were ambushed and killed by the Ghost King sect. We came to their rescue a step too late. However, we managed to intercept the Ghost King sect here and exterminate them. Yang Ling nodded and left the matter of reporting to the Punishment Hall branch to him. Now that the people of Sword King City were dead, apart from Chushio's group, he was the only witness. Everyone moved and transported the corpses back. First, they placed them in the Jian State Prefecture's Inspector Hall. Later, the people of the Guanxi branch would come over to check and confirm the situation before receiving the corpses. After all, the people who died were from Sword King City and the people from Ghost King Sect. The higher-ups would definitely send someone to investigate and confirm the situation. However, just as Chushio's side settled the corpses, Lin Kaiyun rushed in with 2 disciples of Sword King City. When he saw the corpses of Sword King City's people, he couldn't believe his eyes. Senior brother. Lin Kaiyun looked at Gu Jiangliu's corpse and shouted in disbelief. The eyes of the other 2 disciples of Sword King City also turned red, and their faces were filled with grief. Gu Jiangliu and Lin Kaiyun didn't have the same master, but they were both disciples of the War Sword Hall. Gu Jiangliu took good care of Lin Kaiyun since childhood. When Lin Kaiyun was young, he didn't show his talent and was very inconspicuous among the disciples. Because of his extreme and eccentric personality, he was often bullied. Gu Jiangliu always stood up for him. Later, when Gu Jiangliu became the sword instructor of the War Sword Hall, he also gave Lin Kaiyun special attention and helped him hone his swordsmanship step by step. This time, only a portion of the cultivators of the War Sword Hall were sent to hunt down the Ghost King sect. Lin Kaiyun, as a young genius of Sword King City, didn't need to come. He only needed to seclude himself in the sect. However, Lin Kaiyun had come precisely because Gu Jiangliu was leading the team this time. He didn't expect that along the way he would be fine, but his senior brother would die in an accident. Lin Kaiyun suddenly turned around and looked at Chushio with bloodshot eyes. He shouted, "What the hell happened? Those people from the Ghost King sect have become stray dogs. How did senior brother and the others die?" Chushio coughed and said indifferently, "A stray dog is also a vicious dog. It similarly has sharp teeth and can bite people to death." Mr. Gu was too anxious. After learning the whereabouts of the Ghost King sect, he didn't wait for me or you to come and directly attacked. As a result, he fell into the ambush of the Ghost King sect and was killed. By the time I arrived with my men, the people of Sword King City and an inspector of my Guangzhong torture room had already been killed by the Ghost King sect. Fortunately, the Ghost King sect's survivors also consumed a lot of their strength. Some of them were killed and some were seriously injured by Mr. Gu. It just so happened that I arrived with my men and wiped them all out. It can be considered as avenging Mr. Gu. Chushio's words were reasonable. Just by looking at the marks on the corpses, as well as the traces of fighting at the scene, it was indeed so. No one could find any fault with it. However, the 2 warriors of Sword King City felt that something was wrong. Gue Ming of the Ghost King sect was seriously injured. No matter how the rest of the Ghost King sect ambushed them, they shouldn't be able to kill Gu Jiangliu. But before they could think too much, Lin Kaiyun pointed at Chushio and shouted, "Then why didn't you show up earlier? What's the use of showing up when he's already dead? Senior brother's death was partly caused by the trash of your Guangzhong torture room." At this time, Lin Kaiyun's heart was filled with grief and indignation. Let alone Chushio, who he had always disliked. Even if it was Wei Jiuduan, he could vent his anger on him. But Chushio didn't have the habit of standing and not talking back when he was scolded. His face darkened and he said coldly, "You were an idiot and fell into the enemy's trap. What does it have to do with my Guangzhong torture room? You can't kill someone, and you want to blame others for your own death. There's no such logic anywhere. Lin Kaiyun, your senior brother is dead. No matter how sad or angry you are, go somewhere else. This is the Guangzhong torture room, not a place where you can behave atrociously." Hearing this, Lin Kaiyun suddenly exploded. He unsheathed the long sword in his hand, and in an instant, a touch of melodious blue light shone in the entire hall. The long sword in his hand was called Flowing Cloud. It was light and shining, and one could feel the power of the wind and clouds. It was a 5th Revolution precious weapon, and was personally forged by a master swordsmith from the Hall of Gods. When the long sword was unsheathed, the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart by the sword. In the blink of an eye, Lin Kaiyun's sword had already appeared in front of Chushio's eyes. In terms of pure speed, This sword was even 3 times faster than Chu Xiu's Azure Dragon Sleeve. Under the fast sword, Chu Xiu formed the Dugu seal. His whole body erupted with gang energy, and he was as solid as a mountain. When the long sword collided with the gang energy, it was as if it had hit a mountain. Amidst the explosion of gang energy, Chu Xiu did not move an inch, but Lin Kaiyun could not help but take a step back. This caused his red eyes to reveal a look of horror. He knew the speed and power of his sword. Like the wind and clouds, there were only a few martial artists at the same level as him who could react in time. But now Chu Xiu had blocked his sword. In front of Chu Xiu's strange seal, it was as if he was facing a mountain, unstoppable and unsurpassable. Dugu seal dispersed, and Chu Xiu unsheathed the red sleeve saber in his hand. The blood-refined divine aura shone in the sky, and the entire hall was reflected in a cruel crimson color. As the gang energy slashed down, the saber momentum was ethereal and formless like a drizzle, but it was densely packed, blocking all of Lin Kaiyun's escape routes. Sword King City's martial artists were famous for their sword skills. For example, Gu Jiangliu's Flaming River Sword and Lin Kaiyun's Wind and Cloud Sword. They drew support from the wind and clouds to erupt with unparalleled speed. But in terms of gang energy, although Sword King City's martial artists were not weak, they were definitely not too strong. As for Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine aura, it was on the same level as the White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Fiend divine aura and Chunyang Dao Sec's pure yang aura. Under the effect of the blood-refined divine aura, even if Lin Kaiyun's sword momentum was as smooth as flowing water and his speed was fast, he still couldn't break Chu Xiu's saber momentum. If Lin Kaiyun had attacked Chu Xiu before, he was just venting his grief and indignation. But now he wholeheartedly wanted to defeat Chu Xiu. He was an outstanding disciple of Sword King City's younger generation, while Chu Xiu was just an ordinary martial artist from a humble background who had stepped onto the Longhu list by chance. Lin Kaiyun had been suppressed by Fang Qishao all his life. When people mentioned Sword King City, they only knew Fang Qishao, not Lin Kaiyun. Losing to Fang Qishao for so many years was one thing, but he couldn't accept losing to a humble person like Chu Xiu. Lin Kaiyun shouted, and the sword aura around him suddenly erupted. The incomparably sharp sword qi blended into the wind, and even his body seemed to transform into the wind. Countless dense sword edges tore through Chu Xiu's saber momentum and slashed towards Chu Xiu with a hurricane-like roar. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, and wisps of black mist wrapped around his hand. He slashed down with his saber, and the sound of ghosts wailing and gods wailing reverberated. The Avicii hell descended, and death qi and hatred filled the entire hall. A loud bang resounded, and the gale was extinguished. The Cloudstream sword in Lin Kaiyun's hand was sent flying and fell to the ground. For the martial artists of Sword King City, as long as the sword was in their hands, the person was there. Once the sword was out of their hands, the person had already lost half the battle. Chu Xiu took a step forward and sent a palm strike towards Lin Kaiyun. He executed the heaven-extinguishing earth-annihilating palm of the Great Purple Sun, forcing Lin Kaiyun to take a few steps back. The purple sun demonic flames entered his body, making him feel like he was on fire. Lin Kaiyun stepped forward again. This time, Buddhist light flashed, and the great Vajra will seal fell. This time Lin Kaiyun couldn't hold on any longer. He was directly hit by Chu Xiu, and blood spurted out of his mouth as he was sent flying. Chapter 199. From the moment Lin Kaiyun made his move to the moment Chu Xiu sent him flying and spitting blood, the two had only exchanged a dozen moves. It was a completely one-sided outcome. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't take Lin Kaiyun seriously at all. There were very few martial artists of the same level that Chu Xiu took seriously. After stepping into the physical invulnerability realm, Chu Xiu had fought many three-flower realm martial artists. Only such existences could become Chu Xiu's opponents. Although Lin Kaiyun wasn't weak, he had obviously picked the wrong opponent. After sending Lin Kaiyun flying and spitting blood, Chu Xiu didn't continue to attack. He just wanted to teach his opponent a lesson. He had no intention of killing him. Chu Xiu had openly killed an outstanding martial artist of the Sword King City's younger generation in the Inspector Hall. Only a fool would do such a thing. After Lin Kaiyun was sent flying by Chu Xiu, The two Sword King City disciples on the side immediately went over to support him. They glared at Chu Xiao. The two of them wanted to make a move just now, but the battle between Chu Xiao and Lin Kaiyun was no longer something they could interfere with. If they acted rashly, they might get injured accidentally. Moreover, just as they were about to make a move, Tang Ye and Yin Bugui stared at them. They were sure that if they moved, Tang Ye and Yin Bugui would also make a move. One of the martial artists pointed at Chu Xiao and shouted, "Chu Xiao, you dare to be so ruthless to the people of my Sword King City? What are you trying to do?" One of the cultivators shouted as he pointed at Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao said coldly, "It's not what I'm trying to do." Lin Kaiyun was the one who went crazy first. "It's understandable that you're sad and angry that someone from Sword King City died, but this is the Guanzhong torture room. It's not a place where you can vent your anger." The two Sword King City martial artists snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. After all, Lin Kaiyun was the one who attacked first. Moreover, Lin Kaiyun's current state was not quite right. Although Chu Xiao's great Vajra will seal had caused him to vomit blood, it could not be considered a serious injury. However, at this moment, Lin Kaiyun's eyes were dull, and he did not even wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. It wasn't that he was heavily injured, but he couldn't believe that he had been defeated so miserably by Chu Xiao. Lin Kaiyun had always been a proud and unyielding person. In the entire Sword King City, only Fang Qishao stood above him. From the day he started cultivating, he had made Fang Qishao his target. Unfortunately, when he fought with Chu Xiao today, he was completely beaten black and blue. Chu Xiao was born in the wilderness. Whether it was his background or his reputation, he was inferior to him. But now he was defeated by such a person. He couldn't even defeat Chu Xiao. How could he compete with Fang Qishao? What qualifications did he have to compete with Fang Qishao? For Lin Kaiyun, who was overly angry, this kind of blow was even more serious than the injuries on his body. The two Sword King City cultivators looked at Lin Kaiyun helplessly. They couldn't do anything about Lin Kaiyun's situation. But now that the Ghost King Sect's people were dead, they had to take back some things. One of them said coldly to Chu Xiao, "Sword King City and the Ghost King Sect's corpses and their belongings are mine." Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Your Sword King City cultivators' corpses naturally belong to you, but I killed the Ghost King Sect's people, and they died in my Guanzhong torture room. Why should I give them to you?" The Sword King City cultivator snorted coldly, "We chased them for thousands of miles and let them escape to Guanzhong. Therefore, the Ghost King Sect's corpses and their belongings must belong to Sword King City." At this time a cold voice was heard. "Who said it belongs to Sword King City? If your Sword King City wants the corpses of the Ghost King Sect's disciples and their belongings, send your experts to my Guanzhong punishment hall to demand them." Wei Jiuduan led his people into the hall and looked at the Sword King City cultivator. His imposing manner was very domineering, but it was completely different from the last time. When Gu Jianglu and the others came for the first time, Wei Jiuduan didn't want to cause trouble. He didn't have any interest in this matter, so he endured no matter how arrogant Gu Jianglu and the others were. But now Gu Jianglu and the others were dead. Most importantly, the Ghost King Sect's people were also dead. These Devil Path survivors still had some good things in their hands. Wei Jiuduan was a greedy person, so how could he tolerate others snatching things from him? Not even Sword King City's people. Therefore, the Sword King City cultivators couldn't take away the Ghost King Sect's corpses and their belongings. If Wei Jiuduan could use those things, he would naturally keep them for himself. Even if he couldn't use them, he could report them to the headquarters and get a reward. Seeing Wei Jiuduan, the Guanxi penal officer, personally come forward, the two Sword King City cultivators looked at each other and could only helplessly leave with Lin Kaiyun. This time, Sword King City had suffered a great loss. They lost so many people, but in the end, the Guanzhong torture room people took away their belongings. What kind of situation was this? However, the two of them could be considered lucky. If they hadn't followed Lin Kaiyun, they would have become corpses by now. Seeing that the Sword King City cultivators had no choice but to leave, Wei Jiuduan waved his hand and ordered people to bring back the Ghost King Sect's corpses. He looked at Chu Xiao and nodded. "You did a good job. When you report to the higher-ups, I'll remember your contribution. Chu Xiu quickly cupped his hands and thanked Wei Jiuduan. Thank you, sir. Although Chu Xiu thanked Wei Jiuduan verbally, he didn't really care about the so-called contribution. The Guanzhong torture room's rewards were notoriously pitiful. Even if Wei Jiuduan gave him all the credit, Chu Xiu wouldn't be interested in the rewards. The only use of the credit was to let Chu Xiu add another line to the Guanzhong torture room's merit book, so that he could be promoted in the future. At this time, Wei Jiuduan glanced at Yangling and said to Chu Xiu, Chu Xiu, I have something to tell you. After saying that, Wei Jiuduan called Chu Xiu to a study room. After closing the door, Wei Jiuduan looked at Chu Xiu and asked, Tell me, how did Wei Hanshan die? Chu Xiu said in astonishment, Of course they were killed by the Ghost King sect. Wei Hanshan wanted to snatch the credit, so he didn't wait for me to arrive before attacking with the Sword King city's people. In the end, he was also killed by the Ghost King sect's people. When we arrived, Wei Hanshan and the Sword King city's people were already dead. Wei Jiuduan nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He was just habitually suspicious, so he wanted to trick Chu Xiu. He might have some doubts about Chu Xiu's words, but Yangling was his adopted son. Since Yangling saw it with his own eyes, there was naturally no doubt about it. If there was anything wrong, it would be that Wei Hanshan was a little too anxious. He actually followed Sword King City to deal with the Ghost King sect alone. Wei Jiuduan knew about the enmity between Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan. In the end, Wei Hanshan's death was so coincidental, so it was inevitable that Wei Jiuduan would be suspicious. But now that Chu Xiu didn't reveal any flaws, Wei Jiuduan also didn't dwell on this issue too much. He coughed and said, You should know about the situation in the Guanxi region. Now that Wei Hanshan is dead, the Shang prefecture should be replaced by someone else. Logically speaking, this person should be you, Chu Xiu. After all, you have made a great contribution this time. At this point, Wei Jiuduan suddenly changed his tone and said, However, the enmity between you and Wei Hanshan is something that everyone in the Guanxi region knows about. Now that Wei Hanshan has just died, you have already occupied his territory. This is not a good thing to say, and it will also cause people to suspect that Wei Hanshan's death is related to you. So the Shang prefecture cannot be given to you. Chu Xiu sneered in his heart. It seemed that Yangling's words had an effect, or rather, it was the bribe he gave Yangling to bribe Wei Jiuduan with had an effect. As expected, this old thing had never been at ease with him. Taking advantage of the situation, he wanted to take the Shang prefecture away. An unconvinced expression appeared on Chu Xiu's face as he said, Justice is in the hearts of the people. By the time I arrived, Wei Hanshan had already been killed. What does it have to do with me? Lord Wei, this subordinate refuses to accept this. Seeing that Chu Xiu actually dared to refute him, Wei Jiuduan could not help but snort coldly and said, Chu Xiu, don't be ungrateful. I am doing this for your own good. The Guanzhong torture room is not the Blue Dragon society that you used to stay in. You should know that gossip is a fearful thing. Although you've contributed a lot to this matter, it's not just you alone. Yangling has been running errands for the people of Sword King City for a long time. He's just an ordinary constable, not even a patrol inspector. So, you should give this opportunity to him, and let him be the inspector of the Shang prefecture. At this point, Wei Jiuduan also felt that he had indeed gone a bit too far. After all, Chu Xiu gave him a lot of filial piety every month. Moreover, the people of the Ghost King sect were all killed by Chu Xiu. Therefore, he coughed and his expression became a little more amiable as he said, Chu Xiu, don't think that I am biased towards Yangling because he is my adopted son. In fact, I am considering the overall situation. Otherwise, how could Yangling be just an ordinary constable after following me for more than 10 years? You have just joined the Guanzhong torture room, and your time is still too short. If I let you manage 2 prefectures now, it will inevitably cause jealousy. Taking a step back is also for your own good. However, you don't have to worry. I'll remember all your contributions. Don't worry, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely help you get promoted and make you the patrol with the greatest authority in the Guanxi area. After all, the other patrol inspectors are already old, but you Chu Xiu are still young, so don't worry. Hearing Wei Jiuduan's dignified words, Chu Xiu put on 120% of his acting skills, and put on an expression of unwillingness but submission. He reluctantly cupped his hands and said, "Yes, this subordinate obeys." Chapter 200. Wei Jiuduan was very satisfied with Chu Xiu's submission. He had been in charge of Guanxi for so many years, and his requirement for his subordinates was very simple. There was only one word: obedience. Regardless of whether you were dissatisfied or cursed in your heart, as long as you were obedient, Wei Jiuduan would be satisfied. When he walked out of the study, Yang Ling was still waiting outside. Chu Xiu snorted coldly at Yang Ling, turned around and left. From Wei Jiuduan's point of view, Chu Xiu's attitude was considered normal. However, he did not notice the strange look in Chu Xiu and Yang Ling's eyes. Wei Jiuduan patted Yang Ling's shoulder and said, "Yang Ling, don't say that I didn't promote you this time. In order for you to be the patrol inspector, I forcefully suppressed the credit that Chu Xiu deserved." Yang Ling had a smile at the corner of his mouth. He cupped his hands respectfully at Wei Jiuduan and said, "Thank you, foster father. Rest assured, foster father, I will definitely go through fire and water for foster father in the future. I will be loyal and filial." Wei Jiuduan smiled with satisfaction and led Yang Ling out of the door. In the secret chamber, after Wei Jiuduan left with his people, he instructed the Ghost Hand King, Du Guangzhong, and the others that he was going to go into seclusion. Chu Xiu did not know what the token fragment from the Ghost King sect was used for. This thing was very likely to be related to the Kunlun devil cult in the past. Therefore, Chu Xiu could not take it out for others to see. As for those two cultivation methods, they were a pleasant surprise for Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was very familiar with these two cultivation methods. They were written on the skin of an unknown beast, and the text was blood red and twisted. These were the two cultivation methods from the Heaven and Earth Intersecting Yin-Yang sorrowful poem. The two techniques that Chu Xiu obtained from the Ghost King sect were the Great Acupoint Shifting Technique of Heaven and Earth, and the Great Chaos of Heaven and Earth. In the original plot, Chu Xiu had heard of the Heaven and Earth Shifting Great Acupoint Shifting Technique, but he had never heard of the name of the Heaven and Earth Chaos Great Origin Technique. The Great Acupoint Shifting Art of Shifting Heaven and Earth had the lowest evaluation in the Great Sorrowful Poem of Heaven and Earth Intersecting Yin and Yang. It was only at the fifth revolution, and its function was not to attack, but to support. The meridians and acupoints in the human body all had fixed positions, unless you were born different from ordinary people. For example, your heart was on the right side, or your meridians were in a unique position. However, such cases were still rare. Therefore, most of the martial arts in the Jianghu had a fixed location for the meridians and acupoints that one would pass through when practicing. There were also some offensive martial arts, such as some sinister and ruthless sword techniques or finger techniques, which attacked the vital points of the human body. As the name suggested, the Great Acupoint Shifting Technique allowed one to shift their meridians and acupoints. When facing an enemy, even if the acupoints were shifted by an inch, it would be able to avoid injuring their vitals and save their lives. Moreover, this martial art also had some effects when practicing. For example, when using this martial art to shift the meridians and acupoints while circulating qi, it could also make the circulation of qi smoother and faster. In short, this martial art was somewhat ordinary and had no direct effects. It was mainly used as a support. Its evaluation of the Fifth Revolution was mostly because it was one of the great sorrowful poems of Heaven and Earth crossing Yin and Yang. Otherwise, based on the world of martial arts habit of grading martial arts, this sort of support-type martial arts would not have a high grade. Only qi skills that could increase one's realm or martial arts skills that were incredibly powerful would be seen as orthodox and be given a very high grade. At this time, Chu Xiu picked up the other Great Chaos of Heaven and Earth Chaos Great Origin Technique and carefully read it. This martial art did not appear in the original plot. It was possible that it was obtained by the righteous sects and destroyed, or even secretly practiced. After reading it, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly lit up. The Great Chaos of Heaven and Earth Chaos Great Origin Technique turned out to be an internal strength. and it was a powerful internal strength that did not look like a demonic martial art. At the beginning of the world, primordial chi had not yet been divided, and the clear, turbid and chaos were one. This was the origin of the great chaos of heaven and earth chaos great origin technique. In the body, the scene of the beginning of the world was simulated, so that the clear, turbid and chaos were integrated into one. When attacking, the power of the primordial burst out without the slightest attribute, but because the power of the primordial was the power of the beginning of the world, it could resist any internal strength gang chi, and it could also integrate any internal strength gang chi. In the past, the internal strength that Chu Xiu mainly cultivated was the Xiantian skill. Although his foundation was very stable, he did not have many special abilities other than that. But now the great chaos of heaven and earth chaos great origin technique could make Chu Xiu's own cultivation accumulation to a higher level, and the explosive power when fighting was even more amazing. Moreover, because it could integrate any internal strength gang chi, Chu Xiu did not have to worry about the power in his body conflicting. From Chu Xiu's perspective, the great chaos of heaven and earth chaos great origin technique had at least 6 revolutions, and it was even possible for it to be 7 revolutions. The most important thing was that Chu Xiu had already collected 4 of the great sorrow of heaven and earth chaos great origin technique. Was there any hope for him to collect the remaining 3? And according to Chu Xiu, of the remaining 3, 2 of them were very powerful, one was 7 revolutions, and the other was 8 revolutions. And if he really collected the great sorrow of heaven and earth chaos great sorrow of heaven and earth chaos great origin technique, and the 7 martial arts into one, he did not know if it would really have the power to shock the world and make ghosts and gods weep. Of course, these were only temporary thoughts of Chu Xiu. After getting the martial arts, he used this opportunity to start practicing in seclusion, and he left the outside matters to the Ghost Hand King and Du Guangzhong to handle. In fact, there was no big problem in the Jianzhou prefecture at the moment. The people of the Ghost King sect had been cleaned up, and the order in the Jianzhou prefecture was also recovering. There were more merchants coming and going, and it was only a matter of time before the city returned to its peak. Similarly, with Wei Hanshan dead, no one came to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. Previously, Du Guangzhong said that Wei Hanshan was the illegitimate son of the Nine Plains Wei clan, but with Wei Hanshan's death, the Nine Plains Wei clan did not show up, perhaps because they had no reason to and no opportunity to do so. After all, the people from the main hall had investigated the matter of the Ghost King sect. Wei Hanshan died in the hands of the Ghost King sect, and there was no flaw in the story. It had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. They didn't even have a reason to blame Chu Xiu for being late. With Yang Ling testifying on the side, it was the people of Sword King City who were anxious and acted without waiting for Chu Xiu, who could be blamed for courting death. Moreover, there was no news from Sword King City even after such a long time had passed. It was likely that Sword King City had pinched their noses and accepted the matter. Although Wei Hanshan died in the Guanzhong torture room, he was killed by the Ghost King sect. No idiot from Sword King City would come to cause trouble for the Guanzhong torture room. Of course, Sword King City had suffered such a big loss this time. It was inevitable that they would hunt down the Ghost King sect in the underworld. Moreover, Chu Xiu speculated that Sword King City didn't know what the Ghost King sect had in their hands. Perhaps they knew what the Ghost King sect had, but they didn't think that the value of these things was worth it for them to fall out with the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore, even after such a long time, Sword King City hadn't come to negotiate with the Guanzhong torture room because of the Ghost King sect's corpses. According to Chu Xiu, it should be the former. The great compassion poem of heaven and earth intersecting yin and yang wasn't a low-grade cultivation method. Although it wasn't suitable for Sword King City's cultivators to practice, it could still be sealed. It was the same with the fragment of the token. The people from the Ghost King sect thought that it was as valuable as the great compassion poem of heaven and earth intersecting yin and yang. Since they were kept together, it was obviously not something simple. Although these things together weren't enough for the sect master of Sword King City to come and ask for them in person, at least the hall master of the Battle Sword Hall would be enough. However, Sword King City didn't respond at all. Therefore, Chu Xiu guessed that they didn't know the true value of this thing and underestimated it. That was why they decided to give it to the Guanzhong torture room. 2 months later, before Chu Xiu was ready to come out of seclusion, Du Guangzhong sent a message saying that Wei Jiuduan was looking for him. Chu Xiu frowned when he heard the news. What was Wei Jiuduan up to this time? Originally, Chu Xiu didn't plan to come out of seclusion so soon. Chu Xiu had already cultivated the great pressure point shifting technique of heaven and earth. During this time, Chu Xiu mainly cultivated the great chaos technique of heaven and earth. In fact, Chu Xiu wanted to use this opportunity to break through to the three-flower realm at one's prominence. After fighting with warriors at the three-flower realm at one's prominence several times, Chu Xiu had some understanding of his current realm. He could try to break through to the three-flower realm at one's prominence, but Wei Jiuduan had obviously disrupted his plans. Chu Xiu asked, "Did Wei Jiuduan say what it is?" Du Guangzhong shook his head and said, "He didn't say. However, judging from the attitude of the messenger, it shouldn't be anything bad. He also didn't ask you to go there right away." Chu Xiu nodded and made arrangements for the inspector's hall. He then went straight to the Guanxi branch. In a meeting room of the Guanxi branch, Wei Jiuduan smiled when he saw Chu Xiu coming. He said, "Chu Xiu, you got a great credit last time, but you didn't get the Shangzhou government. That was a bit unfair for you. This time, I've given you a good opportunity. It's up to you whether you can take it or not." Chu Xiu was puzzled and asked, "What is Master Wei referring to?" Wei Jiuduan kept him in suspense and said, "Anyway, it's a good thing. You'll know when you come with me to the main hall." With that, Wei Jiuduan took Chu Xiu with him, and quickly arrived at the main hall of the punishment hall. Chu Xiu was a little confused. After arriving at the main hall, Chu Xiu found that it was a lot livelier than before. In the past, the main hall was the place that commanded the entire Guanzhong and gave orders. Although there were a lot of people here, it was not like today. The warriors of the punishment hall from Guangdong, Guanbei, and Guannan were all gathered here. Chu Xiu even saw some people from the punishment division. Seeing this, Chu Xiu couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Could something big have happened in the Guanzhong torture room?" However, judging by Wei Jiuduan's expression, it couldn't be anything bad. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.